If you thought you avoided getting wet, I'll get wet. I turned it off anyway, I just didn't turn it on. Here we go again. All right. Acts chapter 27. When is the last time you heard a sermon or had a Bible class on the shipwreck in Acts chapter 27? And here we are. I mean, we're nearing the end of our Acts study. Next week, we'll be finishing up. There's material already out in the foyer for today, of course, as well as for next week. And then we move on to other topics here in our auditorium Sunday morning class. Acts chapter 27 tells us about the shipwreck that Paul endured. Now, earlier to this period of time, Paul had written a letter to the Corinthians, his second letter, and he talked about the perils he endured, the dangers. And one of them was a couple of shipwrecks, right? One night in the deep. This isn't it. So he's had at least 3 shipwrecks prior to this, and here he is now having another one. Paul did a lot of traveling, and we're not always privy to all the times that he went here, there, and yonder, and this one is here. And one of the questions I want to ask as we start is, why? Do you realize how detailed, I hope you do, how there are numerous nautical terms. I got to be careful there, not naughty terms, nautical. What's a nautical term? Talking about their seafaring. There are over 40 nautical terms in Acts 27. Why such detail? Especially here at the end. I mean, Luke could have just mailed it in and said, well, I mean, I've done 26 chapters. We'll just do this chapter 27 here real quick. No, it's long. It's detailed. It's magnificent. Why do you think Luke gives us so much technical information about this shipwreck? In fact, it is the most detailed ship account from the ancient world. Isn't that something? Right here in the Bible. And people who come along and say, oh, the Bible's not inspired, let's take this apart and tear it apart, and they go, wow, this is amazing. All this detail. Yes, sir.
Well, part of it is fulfilling of what Jesus had prophesied and said to all.
Okay.
And so all the details come in and say, oh, that's a killer. And the next incident, well, that's a killer. He's never going to make the next one. You got snake. Well, he's going to die. And the next, it's just one after the other. It shows the providence of God.
It shows the providence of God. So what did Jesus tell him in Acts 19? I guess I'll just say Acts 23, verse 11. You are going to Rome. You're going to Rome. Paul appeals to Caesar. He is now on a ship bound for Rome. And as far as he knew, as far as everybody knew, we'll get there in a few weeks. They were blown off course, and they had delay after delay after delay. And that's what we're going to see this morning once we start getting into Acts 27. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Details add validity.
Okay, details add validity, historicity. How about this? Acts has had a lot of exciting narratives, close calls, a lot of persecution. Is it possible to say that Luke is going out on a bang? That he has given us this exciting narrative in a book that is filled with other narratives. And this is just exciting stuff. But that's not the end of it. That's not the main purpose, to entertain us, to delight us. But it does. And I hope to bring that out as well. There end up being 3 different ships that they get on. And that's not really that big of a deal, except to take note of them. I also want you to why don't we do this? Let's get through verse 12. Let's get through verse 12. And I'm not going to have all the verses on the screen because it's just a long chapter with a lot of details. But we will divide it up into 4 parts this morning. Very glad that you're here, hot and muggy out there. Hopefully we will stay somewhat dry, except for the humidity. And we're going to look at verses 1 through 12 first. Paul reaches Fair Havens. So they make it from Caesarea Maritima. They make their journey to as far as Fair Havens, which is on the island of Crete. Now you should have in your Bible, in the back of your Bible, a map. Perhaps you don't have one quickly available if you have a digital Bible, but I bet most of us do. There's also some maps in the printed material. But I'll observe with you here in verses 1 and 2 that there is a centurion named Julius who is responsible for Paul. Julius. He is of the Augustan cohort. And I put some details about this cohort in the notes. Do you remember that Cornelius was a member of a cohort? Do you remember what it was called? All the way back in Acts 10, he was part of the Italian cohort. And so this one is the Augustan cohort. What does that sound like? Anybody know what the word Augustan means? Or what would it possibly be in honor of? Augustus, he was the first Caesar. That's right. And this is a very top-notch group of soldiers. Something to keep in mind there. We're looking at that detail. It says they were about to sail to the ports along the coast of Asia and put to sea, accompanied by Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica. Have we seen Aristarchus before? We sure have. When Paul was in Thessalonica, he was with them at Jerusalem. And so you've got Paul on this boat. You've got Aristarchus with Paul. Who else? One more person. Luke. It doesn't say Luke this and Luke that, does it? Oh, thank you. Sir? He's writing. He's saying we this and we that. So he is with him. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. So he is embarking in a ship on Adramyttium, was about to set sail. So here we go. We're setting sail. There's Sidon in Lebanon, although they didn't call it Lebanon back then, did they? So they reach Sidon, which is great. And notice what it says. Julius treated Paul kindly by doing what? Letting him meet with folks. Who do you think those friends were? Yeah, disciples, Christians. And this is a nice kindness. Now, As far as Julius is concerned, though, what is Paul really? He's nothing more than, he's a prisoner. He's a Jewish rabbi who's caused a lot of trouble. So why is he being so nice to him early on? He's a Roman. Okay. So he knows Paul isn't just your run-of-the-mill prisoner. Perhaps that's what's going on. He just knows something about Paul. We're going to see Julius have different views about Paul as we go on. Yes, ma'am. Okay, yeah. So the person he stood before in Acts 25, the governor, Festus, Agrippa, the king, both of them had already said, Paul, you're innocent. Too bad you appealed to Caesar. Also, all the way back in chapter 21, chapter 22, chapter 23, there was the tribune, Lysias, who had written a letter to one of the governors, and it didn't really go anywhere, but I'm sure within the Roman cohort, word has gotten around perhaps. Maybe they knew each other. We're not told. Be that as it may, he is being kind to Paul. They get to this nice, beautiful port in Sidon within reasonable time. And so they're trying to get to Rome. But you can see there Sidon right below that on this very grainy map. Right below that, there we go. There's Sidon, is Caesarea. So they're just going along the coast here. And now they're going to start traveling up to this area here. And it says, under the lee of Cyprus. That is that nautical language, not naughty, nautical. What does it mean to travel under the lee of Cyprus?
Protection from the land.
Protection from the land?
Yeah.
What's the land going to do? Bite you?
The wind and storm.
Okay, yeah. And so these guys are pros. They know how to navigate, and they're taking full advantage. They know what to do. What exactly did you say? Okay, all right. So these guys know what they're doing, and then they're going to keep traveling, and eventually get on another ship. So everything's fine. Everything's good. It's going to be a great trip. It's supposed to be just a 3-hour tour, and it turns into a months-long disaster. All right, it's probably around August, September when they're setting out. So that it should be fine. It's late in the season, but going from Caesarea to Rome happens all the time with these grain ships from Alexandria, Egypt. And when he had sailed across the open sea along the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra in Lycia. There the centurion found, here's the next ship, the main ship they're going to be on, a ship from Alexandria sailing for Italy, and put us on board. We sailed slowly for a number of days and arrived with difficulty off Cnidus. Cnidus is an island. And when, as the sea did not allow us to go farther, we sailed under the lee of Crete off Salmone. Coasting along it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens, near which was the city of Lasea. Okay, everybody got that? Everybody know where these places are? We just know them as like the back of our hand. Now, if I had said something about, that they went to Eyre Street and then they turned onto Saratoga Boulevard and then they went down, you would get that, right? I wouldn't, because I have no sense of direction. This is the kind of ship from the ancient world. This is a model of an Alexandrian grain ship from the 1st century. Here's another view of that model. That's a nice big boat, isn't it? Underneath would be the wheat, protected from the water. Did you know that wheat will combust if it gets wet? If it gets excessively wet, it'll. So that's a consideration. Where do they sleep? You know where they sleep? I went on a cruise and I had this nice little cabin that I could go in, and it was nice. And did Paul have a cabin? They just slept on the deck. So they had food that had been provided to them from Malta, and so they're just on deck sleeping day and night. What else are you going to do? They didn't have, they didn't have Netflix back then. So it's just out on the open sea. All right, so they're on this ship, and Luke has just given us a ton of places for us to look at. Now, Cilicia and Pamphylia, Lycia, they are regions. They are Roman provinces. The others are, well, Crete is an island. I should have put it in the blue as well. But these others are locations. So Salmone and Fair Havens are actually on Crete. But they're traveling along, and he's giving us all these details. Again, why? Do we really care? Luke, why are you telling us all these things? One is for historicity. He's letting us know, hey, I'm writing, and I know what I'm talking about. So I don't have all the places here on this quick little map, but there we go again. There is Cnidus. It's not really showing the island, but there is Salmone, and this is what you get with AI. So that's a nice, pretty AI map. They never stopped at Salmone, and it makes it look like that's what they did. It's a cape. They have to go around it, and this isn't exactly where these places are, but it's a nice, pretty map, and I thought, I'll just leave it in. Lycia, Fair Havens, and so you see they never stop. They never stop here until they get to Fair Havens. Now, this map shows an island called Clauda. You might see it as Cauda or Kauda, same place. They never go there. This is just showing the route they would have taken. So what they want to do is go from Fair Havens, which is a harbor. They have reached it safely, but it's not suitable to stay there for winter. That's what they're going to have to do. It's getting late in the season. They have had some difficulty traveling. It's slowed them down. And what they need to do is just stop and not go anywhere. And that's what they did, right? We wouldn't have the exciting shipwreck now, would we? So they're never going to make it to Clauda. But I want you to see here Fair Havens and Phoenix. From Fair Havens to Phoenix would have only taken a few hours. Now, why didn't they just turn the engines on? Why do they need the wind so much? Well, we know the answer to that. They didn't have that. They didn't have a GPS. They've got the stars. They've got a compass. They've got ancient tools that should have been a great help to them. What happens, though, if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you can't see the stars? You're in trouble. Well, guess what? They're going to get in big trouble. So one of the points is, hey, Paul must go to Jerusalem, or must go to Rome. He did have to go to Jerusalem. Now he's going to Rome. And so this is all part of God's plan, God's providence. But boy, why did it have to be so rough? What is the point of describing in such great detail how difficult this trip was? So we want to get through verses 1 through 12. We get this really important detail. Oh, that's what actually happened. They got blown off course. Hope you could see the red line there, but they just, for 2 weeks, they were out in the middle of nowhere, had no idea where they were. Look at this detail from verse 9. Since much time had passed, they struggled to travel, and the voyage was now dangerous. Why? Because even the fast was over. Well, of course, the fast was over. Paul advised them, saying, Sirs, I perceive that the voyage will be with injury and much loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also of our lives. Ooh, that's foreboding. That doesn't sound good at all. And the centurion said, oh, you're the great Apostle Paul. I'd better listen to you. Is that what the centurion did? He's been nice to Paul, yay. But he's like, I'm not listening to you. What do you know? Hey, I've been on some shipwrecks before. No, he didn't. As far as we know, he didn't bring any of that up. So if you look at verse 7, it says, we sailed slowly for a number of days. We're going to get to verse 19 here soon. It says, on the third day, And then in verse 27, when the 14th night had come. So something's going to happen in verse 13 that is going to reset the day count. And all we have then is day 3 and day 14. And then it says when it was day in verse 39. We'll get to that. So something's going to happen starting in verse 13 that is going to reset everything. This is kind of ending that first leg. When the fast was already over. What does that mean? Somebody reads that, we go, I don't get it. But they would have. What was Luke saying here? Okay, the Day of Atonement was over. Okay, Yom Kippur. What's the big deal? It's in October. It corresponds with our calendar in October. You do not need to be on the open sea going into October. It's just not the season. You just need to hunker down. All right, we got 2 more verses here in this section. This is what it says. But the centurion paid more attention to the pilot and to the owner of the ship than to what Paul said. I mean, can you blame him? Paul's a prisoner. What does he know? This guy is the owner of the ship. This guy is the pilot. And because the harbor was not suitable to spend the winter in, the majority decided to put out to sea from there on the chance that, listen to this, somehow they could reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete, facing both southwest and northwest, and spend the winter there. So are they safe where they are? Fair havens. They're safe. They're there. Is it suitable to stay for the next 3 or 4 months? No, I mean, it's not, it doesn't have a Disneyland, or it doesn't have a lot of, I don't know. It's not large. It's not suitable. Maybe they were worried about the wheat or the ship. Be that as it may, they say, we made it this far. We've got very skilled sailors. We can make this. And I say that especially when we look next at verse 13. So everything thus far, verses 1 through 12, they go together. You throw them all together, and they traveled as far as fair havens on Crete. You look at your map from Caesarea Sidon, above Cyprus. They're traveling along. Everything's going great. And all we need to do is just go a little bit farther. We'll stay there for the winter, and then Paul will be in Rome in no time. Verse 13. Now, when the south wind blew gently, this is good. Supposing that they had obtained their purpose. Next stop, Phoenix. We'll be there in a few hours. This is great. They weighed anchor and sailed along Crete, close to the shore. But soon a tempestuous wind called, oh no, not the northeaster, your Aquilo, your version might say, struck down from the land. And when the ship was caught and could not face the wind, we gave way to it and were driven along. Now, I'm not a sailor. I'm not a seaman at all. What's going on here? Everything's perfect. Weather's perfect. Look at this. We've got this gentle breeze. It's all going to be great. We're just sailing along close to the shore. Nothing should happen. Just a short distance away, and then this storm comes out of nowhere. Have you ever experienced something like this before, where you think everything is great on a trip, on a road trip, and then something happens? There's an accident on the highway. Just be glad you're not the one in the accident, I have to remind myself. Or your health, you feel great, you feel wonderful, and then all of a sudden, you find yourself in the hospital, and you have no idea why. Does that happen to any of us besides me? So you know, on a smaller scale, I hope, what this is like. But they had to give way to it. There's a lot packed in, a lot of drama packed in these verses, and that's why we're slowing down to look at them. What do you think they had in their head We are as good as there. What does that mean? Supposing they had obtained their purpose. They have a different translation there in verse 13.
Well, sometimes when things are going well, you think it's all good, then let my guard down.
Easy peasy. Got this. And then it doesn't go as planned.
It's usually when you let your guard down that it doesn't.
What's the Yiddish saying that we all know so well? Man plans, God laughs. That's part of what's going on here. Murphy's Law. If anything bad can happen, I don't think I said that well. I love the one, a bird in hand is better than a bird overhead. You're always going to find it in the last place you look. I mean, yeah. Okay. Here we go, Murphy's Law. We were as good as there. And is that your hand up? I thought you were acknowledging my beautiful comment.
I've been on several fishing trips to
Ah.
sea, and the worst feeling, the worst mental knowing is that you're out there and you don't feel, I just don't feel good with speed. I did it just because I had to with my work. But once you're out there, the worst feeling is helplessness.
Helplessness.
You're out there already. You're stuck and you feel awful. It's just not a good.
All right, so are you very good at seamanship? So if you're out there, are you good at navigating and?
No.
Okay. Did you have friends who were on that trip?
Yeah.
Were they panicking?
The captain wasn't.
The captain was?
Wasn't.
Okay, he was not. Why not? That's interesting. Why not?
He did it every day.
He did it every day. We're shaking in our boots, and he's like, I got this. It's kind of like with Jesus and the disciples, isn't it? On that boat ride they were on, they were running around with their heads like a chicken with its head cut off. What was Jesus doing while they're going crazy? Ah, we're gonna die. He was asleep. He was tired. He just fed 5,000 people with 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. He'd been teaching and preaching, and he was tired. And these guys woke him up. Don't you care that we are perishing? Boy, that sure sounds a lot like the situation we're going to find ourselves in, because people are going to start panicking, and there will be one man on board who will be as calm as he can be. By the way, what did Paul tell them in was it verse 12? Verse 11. No, Mark, you're messing yourself up. I perceive that the voyage will be with injury and much loss, not only of cargo, but also of our lives. That's verse 10. Was there loss of life? No. Paul will have that revealed to him later. So I find it curious, I find it quite remarkable that even as an apostle, he doesn't know the exact outcome. But an angel is going to appear to him and tell him what's going to happen. So right now, Paul does not know for sure what's going to happen. All he said is, hey, we really should just stay here at Fair Havens. No, we got this. We'll make it to Phoenix. And they never do. They never make it. They don't even get close. They're blown off course. So I'm just going to leave that on the screen as we look at some details here in the remainder of the chapter. One of the things I want to point out is more of this nautical language. In verse 16, running under the lee of a small island called Cauda. They never made it to Cauda, but they were able to use Cauda or Clauda, and we managed with difficulty to secure the ship's boat. I think that's talking about the lifeboat, and we'll see that mentioned again here. But it's with difficulty. So these sailors, what are they thinking to themselves? What are they thinking before they leave Fair Havens? As they're leaving Fair Havens and the wind's blowing just right and everything's good, what are they thinking? The sailors.
Same old, same old.
Same old, same old. Yeah, this we'll get there even sooner. I mean, this is great. This is going to be fantastic. Then they get blown off course, and what are they thinking to themselves? We should be able to handle this. But then they get to the point where they say, we got to let go. Verse 15, we just got to let go and see what happens. In verse 22, Paul says, I urge you to take heart. And he says it again in verse 25, take heart. And in verse 36, you have this again. They were encouraged. So it's that same verb, to take heart, verse 22, verse 25, verse 36. Something else to notice is hope. They lost all hope of being saved. That's an important concept. Do you remember what Paul was saying to Festus, Felix, Festus, and Agrippa, all three of those leaders? I am on trial for the hope of Israel. And what is that hope? Jesus. Ultimately, he's talking about Jesus fulfilling the old covenant in his crucifixion and how we are part of that new covenant. So there's some elements here that keep repeating. There are a lot of nautical terms right here. We saw that in verse 16, verse 25. We must run aground. The sailors take soundings. In verse 28, anybody know what a sounding is? I think you do, but we'll look at those. And they got to run ashore. They make the beach. These are nautical terms that are being translated for us. They're just everywhere. And another interesting feature is an emphasis on salvation and being saved. And it doesn't always get translated that way. Sometimes it's translated as strength. But in verse 20, all hope of our being saved was abandoned at last. Verse 31, unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved. Verse 34, eating this bread, it will give you strength. It will give you, that's the same word for salvation, interestingly enough. Verse 43, the centurion wanted to save Paul. The last verse, verse 44, they were brought safely to land. Chapter 28, verse 1, the next verse, when we were brought safely through. There's some words that just keep recurring over and over, and they relate to being saved and salvation. Could these guys save themselves? I mean, what's the goal at this point? When you're off course, is it, we got to save this wheat. We don't want this wheat to... No, in fact, this is what they start doing. They start taking that wheat and throwing it overboard. Why? Why do they start doing that? To lighten the ship so it can not be held back. They were using an anchor. Well, they're not using an anchor anymore. They want to go as fast as they can, and they're trying to use their navigational skills just to stay alive. Just to stay alive. There's this Paul guy saying, no loss of life because an angel appeared to him, and these folks have not eaten any food. So verse 19 was the third day. That's when they throw the ship's tackle overboard. That's a technical term too, tackle. 21, since they had been without food for a long time, Paul stood up among them and said, men, you should have listened to me and not have set sail from Crete and incurred this injury and loss. Is Paul saying, nanny, nanny, boo, boo, you should have listened to me? Maybe a little. Yet now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. How do you know that, Paul? Verse 23, for this very night there stood before me an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I worship. And he said, do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar. And behold, God has granted you all those who sail with you. So take heart, men, for I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I have been told. But we must run aground on some island. So Paul has gone from being a prisoner, a nobody. All right, maybe we'll treat him nicely, to being completely ignored by the centurion, by the pilot, by the owner of the boat, to now what? How are they going to respond to Paul and what his vision and what he's saying to them? Take heart. You got to eat. No loss of life. They're now listening to this guy. Why? Why would they suddenly start listening to this guy who says, an angel appeared to me? No loss of life.
Well, for one thing, they had lost hope.
They had lost hope.
May as well.
May as well. May as well. Yes, sir. Yeah. I heard you starting to say something. They're out of other options. They're desperate. What choice do they have? It's kind of like when somebody says, yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing you preach. And I said, well, you might as well, because I'll be there and you'll be there. And yeah. What else are we going to do? Or is there something more to it? Is it the way Paul talks to them? Is it the way that he's been handling himself this whole time? Is he letting his little light shine?
Seems to show more reasonableness and hope.
So that's part of the narrative, where people are listening to him. I mean, do you think anybody was ever left the same after encountering Jesus our Lord, having a conversation with him? They either hated him or they loved him. But no one ever really stayed the same. Do you know anybody like that? They're so charismatic, so influential, they're so bigger than life that you're never quite the same after talking to that person. Anybody know somebody like that? They're just bigger than life. I've heard that certain presidents are that way. People who I mean, they're great politicians, and they know how to light up a room and make you feel like you're the most important person in the world. Of course, Jesus wasn't faking it with people. What about Paul? Do you think he is exuding that kind of influence? Yes, ma'am.
And you just have to feel like his demeanor was completely different from everyone else on the boat. Natural reaction when you're tossing and turning is to freak out. But Paul had a calmness.
There's a calmness about Paul.
He finally won them over. At first,
And we need to read that before we quit this morning. Yes, sir.
Now, well, one thing is, Paul's telling all this before it happens. They've got a good wind, the boat's moving great, and all of a sudden this martyr comes in, and the wind, who knows how fast it is, but once it starts getting into the swells, the wind changes direction, it's hard to adjust the sails.
Right.
Because then they're panicked.
And they don't know where they are because of the stars. I didn't read that in verse 30. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, no small tempest lay upon us. In other words, it's bad. All hope of our being saved was at last abandoned. Verse 27, when the 14th night had come. That's not from Caesarea or Sidon. That's not from verse 1. That's counting from verse 13. When they knew they were as good as there. They're blowing off course. They're out in the middle of nowhere for 2 weeks. They're not eating. They're absolutely desperate. They have lost all hope. Looks like Luke's even lost hope. What's Paul doing? Guys, it's going to be okay. My God, whom I serve, is going to take care of us.
Mark, just as an observation, you had mentioned earlier about, well, what did they do on the ship? The time they were sweet sailing,
Yeah.
they had to be bored. Well, I can almost see Paul, just like that picture out there, doing what Paul does, probably teaching, preaching.
I bet he was.
Commending God, letting them know all about the gospel. So I think maybe later on when things get a little dicey, Paul was
He set the groundwork, the foundation. And that's important for us as well. This Wednesday night, we're going to apply that little section, verses 13 through 15. Well, we're not there yet, actually. Never mind. the self-confidence. And we really have applied that a little bit this morning, but we'll do more on Wednesday night. But let's keep going. Verse 27, when the 14th night had come, as we were being driven across the Adriatic Sea, about midnight, the sailors suspected that they were nearing land. So they took a sounding and found 20 fathoms. They would take this device, they would put it as far down in the water as they could, and it had some sort of glue-ish. You can tell I really know what I'm talking about. It would collect from the sea bottom, and they were able to determine from that how close to land they were. So it's 20 fathoms. We're nearing land. Wow, we've been out in the middle of nowhere for 2 weeks. We're near land. This is all after Paul has already told them, hey, we're going to make it. A little farther on, they took a sounding again and found 15 fathoms. Fearing that we might run on the rocks, here it is. They let down 4 anchors, and we're going to talk about our 4 anchors in our lives that help us and sustain us. It'll be a topical study, but it'll be a good study this Wednesday night. All right, verse 29, and fearing that we might run on the rocks, that's another nautical term, running on the rocks. They let down the 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for day to come. We just want to be able to see. And as the sailors were seeking to escape from the ship and had lowered the ship's boat, remember we saw the ship's boat back in verse 17, into the sea under pretense of laying out anchors from the bow, that's bow, right? Yeah, see how smart I am. Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, no. Unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved. Then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the ship's boat and let it go. So it's the sailors who were trying to get away in the lifeboat. Who cuts the ropes in verse 32? The soldiers. So what is Julius doing here? He's stepping out, walking by faith here, and he says, hey, we're going to do what this guy tells us to do. So the sailors just want to get out of Dodge. The soldiers are the ones who have to cut the ropes. As day was about to dawn, verse 33, Paul urged them all to take some food, saying, today is the 14th day. That takes us back to verse 27. That was the night, and now it's the 14th day. Remember how the Jewish people, they counted the day as starting at sunset, and so we're going into the 14th day. That you have continued in suspense without food, having taken nothing. Therefore, I urge you to take some food. It will give you strength. That's that same word for salvation. Got a footnote here. Deliverance. So that it's not the idea of, your souls are going to be saved, but that you will be saved. You will be delivered. For not a hair is to perish from the head of any of you. And when he had said these things, he took bread, and giving thanks to God in the presence of all, he broke it and began to eat. And all were encouraged and ate some food themselves. We were in all 276 persons in the ship. And when we had eaten enough, they lightened the ship, throwing out the wheat into the sea. Now, I hope you'll have a chance to restudy, look at all these details, but you can see verses 1 through 12 go together, verses 13 through 28, verse 26, verse 27, the 14th night, brings us up to verse 39, when it was day. They're getting closer and closer to land. Are they out of danger? No. Why are they still in danger? Sir?
They can still drown.
They could still drown. So they're on a boat that's intact. What happens is it gets closer and closer to land, and you can't really see the land. You're going to hit the rocks long before you get to the island. See how much I know about seamanship by reading a commentary. Now, when it was day, they did not recognize the land. That's the island of Malta there. But they noticed a bay with a beach on which they planned, if possible, to run the ship ashore. So they cast off the anchors. Anchors are now gone. And left them in the sea, and at the same time loosening the ropes that tied the rudders. So they're trying to go as fast as they can now. Why are they trying to go fast? Because they want to get to the island. They want to get to the island, but they've got to go through some rocks, the reef, and there may be some hidden rocks that they can't see, and they're just hoping against hope that they're going to be going fast enough that it will carry them through. The bow stuck and remained unmovable after they hit the reef in verse 41. The stern was being broken up by the surf. The soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners, lest any should swim away and escape. But the centurion, wishing to save Paul, kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and make for the land, and the rest on planks or on pieces of the ship. So it was that all were brought safely to land. This is showing what's called Paul's Bay on the island of Malta. There's three areas that are considered possible shipwreck locations. No one knows for sure. But the point is here at the very end of chapter 27 and then at the very beginning of chapter 28, all were brought safely to land. After we were brought safely through, we learned that the island is called Malta. Whew. Wow, what an adventure. Yes, sir.
Beginning of class, you mentioned the level of detail that he goes into, and I guess just to bring it to today, it's essentially like Hurricane Katrina. The storm was pretty outstanding. Everybody would have known about it, and it would have been pretty miraculous to hear that everybody survived, and also
Right.
it proves that God's plan can't be thwarted because Paul still goes to Rome, but he also can protect in times of
So say that last sentence again. Say that last little part.
God's plans can't be thwarted. Paul still goes to Rome
Okay.
after this, and then also he can protect in times of extreme turmoil.
Exactly. When we feel like the bottom's fallen out in our lives, we need to go back to Acts 27. We need to be calm and pray and carry on. There's a lot going on here in chapter 27. I hope that we're able to see the general layout of the narrative. All hope was lost of being saved. All hope was lost of being saved. Verse 20, verse 44, all were brought safely to land. We'll talk more about this Wednesday night. And then next Sunday, what do I have here? Oh, yeah, here's Paul on the island of Malta. We don't have time. Paul in Rome. There he is. No biker in sight. Smiling. It's all going to be okay. Okay, we will pick up this Wednesday and finish next Sunday.